All right, hello students, and welcome to Introduction to Linux Part 1. We're just going to be delving into kind of the Linux desktop environment, specifically GNOME on Ubuntu. I'll go into what that means later. But this is just kind of if you've just opened up a fresh Linux install and you just want to get used to using it kind of as a normal computer, messing with Word files, going to watch YouTube videos, just casually using a Linux computer, that's going to be what we're getting into today. And I know this can be a little bit intimidating. A lot of people are used to things like Mac or Windows. I know when I first started using Linux, I had a Windows computer and I accidentally damaged the hard drive. It was one of those old like spinning disk drives. It's my freshman year of college and it could not boot into Windows anymore. So I didn't have the money to repair my computer, get a new computer. So I called my parents, and my dad, who has been a longtime Linux stickler, was like, well, it's free to put Linux on a thumb drive. And then from there, you can boot off a thumb drive, test Linux, and you don't even need to access the hard drive of your computer. So I did that. And then for months, I was just using a fresh Linux every time I opened my computer. I couldn't save anything to the hard drive, which you can once you actually install Linux. I just had a busted hard drive. But I got used to working in the Linux space and I never went back. Every computer I've owned since then, I either buy it with Linux installed, buy it with no operating system and install Linux, or God forbid I get a computer that has Windows installed from by default, I uninstall it immediately. So that's kind of my experience with Linux. And if I do my job right, by the end of this, all of you will love Linux and you'll never feel the need to use Windows again. Because it is great once you get used to it. So when you first log in, you'll be presented with this just kind of blank desktop background. On the left here, you have apps and shortcuts. At the top here, you've got date, time. And over on the right here, you've got settings like Wi-Fi, volume, battery. If you click on this, you can see more options, connect which Wi-Fi you're connected to, battery power. And then if you go down here, you can get to settings. And if you open settings, this is how you can change the settings on your system. So for example, I prefer system dark mode. Like this accent color to be this kind of nice Viridian. If we scroll down here, I did that too soon. Scroll down here, we see icon size. So I like to shrink this down to about 16. Icons are pretty small, but they kind of don't get in the way as much. And then you can turn on this feature, auto hide dock, which then if you're not mousing over it, it's gone. Panel mode. Now it's only kind of a little panel. I kind of like the bar to go the whole up and down full screen. You can change it to be bottom, right, for left, and a whole bunch of other settings. So this is kind of the first place you should look if you need to change some of your settings, connect to Wi-Fi, your network, Bluetooth options, change your desktop background. All of that's up in here. So also up here in the top right, we have our lock and our power off / logout options. Lock locks the screen, and it kind of takes you back to a version of the login screen where next time you want to use the computer, you will need to enter your password. So this is helpful if you need to walk away from your computer for a short time and you don't want to leave it open for any passerbys to access. It will keep things running. So even if you have a YouTube video playing in the background, it will continue to play and you'll still be able to hear audio. So it's also helpful if you want to play music but turn the screen off to save power. So that's what lock is for. And then if you go to power off / logout, you've got a few options here. Suspend puts the computer to sleep, but if you have any documents open or things like that, it pauses them. So they'll be right where they were when you come back. So this is a sleep mode, not a full power off, but it does dramatically reduce the power consumption and it leaves everything open where you left it. Restart turns the computer off and back on again. Power off turns the computer all the way off. And logout kicks you back to user selection, so you can log in as a different user, or if you want to log or leave it so that if you want to come back as yourself, you need to enter the password again. But yeah, that's just kicks you back to user select. So those are the options here. They've different use cases. Lock keeps the computer running, keeps music playing, but locks the screen. Suspend suspends everything, puts the computer to sleep. Restart turns it off and back on again. Power off turns it off, and logout kicks you back to user selection. So another icon I want to draw your attention to is, for me, it's right down in this lower left corner, and it's these 9 white dots in a square. And this is show applications. So this will bring up every application you have installed. So a few I really want to draw your attention to right now are LibreOffice, and we've got LibreOffice Writer, LibreOffice Impress, LibreOffice Calc, a few others. LibreOffice Writer is a word processor, and it's kind of meant to compete with some of the other big name word processors that, you know, may or may not be made by Microsoft, that are on the market. So this, you can open it up. You can say, this is an example document. Hello world. You know, same way you would. You can file, save as, and we're just going to call this example document. Save. You can even file, save as. You can scroll down here. And you can scroll through this, and you can find Word 2007 through 365.docx. And this will let you save as a .docx. It'll say, do you want to use the docx format? Do you want to use ODF, which is the kind of default format, the open source format? And you say, nah, I'm good. I want to use the Microsoft Word format. And it will work. So this is something that you're going to want to be like, keep in mind. This can open docx files, doc files. This can edit docx and doc files, and this can save and create docx files. So this is really handy whenever you may be working with other people who are kind of stuck in the past using some of the other competing word processors. And so that's very handy. This is LibreOffice, and it is completely free. So we have it installed on our Linux computers, and much like Linux, it is open source, which means if you want, you can just view the source code and edit the source code. And also what that means is there are a collection of people who are not necessarily employed, but they are working on creating software that they want to use. So Linux itself is made by people who want an operating system to use. LibreOffice is made by people who want a word processor for the sake of using a word processor. So there aren't, again, big corporate oversight. This is not the flagship product of a multi-billion-dollar company. This is more of a grassroots organization of people who want a free alternative, and they want it to be good. So I'm a big fan of open source software, and LibreOffice is great, and it makes working with doc files possible without Microsoft Word, which is amazing. So I'm a big fan of it, and I would highly recommend you use it. LibreOffice Impress. It's a clone of PowerPoint. Just going to use this default template here. I have the default set to this one, using the kind of Yukon PowerPoint template. This, again, is, of course, a production from the University of Connecticut. I'm a student at University of Connecticut, so that's my PowerPoint template of choice. But just like LibreOffice Writer, this is LibreOffice Impress, places PowerPoint. So you can make your slides, save either as a, you can either save as the default, which is an ODF presentation, .odp, or as a .pptx. So there's kind of no problems there. I guess there are other formats too, if you would like. So this is a drop-in replacement to PowerPoint. Very handy. Again, inherits your system theme, beautiful colors, consistent across the whole device. Not important. Still a big fan. So yeah, I just want you to be aware that this tool is here, other tools like it, and that can be very handy. So next I'm going to show just a couple fun ones that, might come in handy, or they might just be fun to play around with. Here's another fun open source piece of software, and this one is really popular kind of in a wide variety of industries, popular in game design and even filmmaking. So that is Blender. I'm absolutely not going to show you right now how to use Blender. There's a lot to know about how to use Blender, but this is a good tool, just a very powerful tool that you can use for 3D modeling, 3D animation, game design. And I'm just including this here to show you that there's a lot of tools available to you on Linux. It's not limiting. And this is the same tool used by industry professionals in a wide variety of industries. Uh, but like, I barely know how to use it, and I don't know how to use it well. But if you want to learn, it is absolutely there for you. Okay, here's one more piece of software I want to bring your attention to. We can go down here. This one's not open source. It's actually made by Microsoft. But you can type VS and you can access to Visual Studio Code. So here I have one file open, which is ex.py. I can run it, and we see down at the bottom here, it executes VS, it executes ex.py and prints hello world. We have plenty of other tabs. We can have multiple windows open. So, through that, see the whole thing. We have access to kind of any other files on the system or in the project directory here. There's plenty of plugins. So it's a very powerful piece of equipment, piece of software that a lot of people use for software development, and that is also available to you. So keep that in mind. In a similar vein, here is another piece of software that you should know about, and this is just text editor. It's actually called gedit. But this is a text editor, and this is just a plain text file. So we can, this is different from a word processor in that word processors have a lot of formatting and things in there. And if you try to open them in plain text, it's just gibberish. Plain text is like the most basic file format. It just, every character is encoded, and it's just a series of characters, including like a new line character, a space character. I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but plain text files are very bare bones, very simple, very old fashioned. They don't compress at all. So if you write a really, really long plain text file, it gets enormous. But if you're ever programming, any scripts you're writing, any programs you're writing, any software you're writing, you're going to want to write that in a plain text file and then kind of save it as whatever language it's for. But those all read plain text. Plain text is much more machine readable. There's much less formatting. So in this case, I'm going to say print hello world from a text editor. And then we can skip through a bunch of these here, or we can save right here. And I'm just going to call this ex2.py. Very important naming convention there, very informative. And then we can call this, this is just a text editor, so it doesn't have a built-in way to run it or a built-in terminal emulator. But if we do open a terminal, we can then say Python 3 ex2.py, hello world from a text editor. I'll show you way more about how to use a terminal later. It's, again, intimidating to look at, but wildly my favorite way to use it. I frequently just open a computer, full screen to terminal. It's great. It's smooth. It's fun. Big fan. We'll get there. But for now, this is just a text editor. The other text editors are available. And we'll get into more of those once we start going over tools that are available in the terminal. But I guess we'll bring this terminal back up, and I can say vim ex2.py. I can open it in a text editor called Vim. I can write quit. I can say Emacs ex2.py. Opens up another one. There's a few others. I think Nano EX2 Nano EX2.py. And here we have another one. And they all have kind of different hotkeys, different shortcuts. Lots of people have a favorite. My favorite's Vim, but different strokes for different folks. All of these tools are made available to you. Pick whichever one you want, whichever one you like, even if it's VS Code. All of these are available to you to help once you start learning to program. These are kind of what you will be using to program in. So I just want to make sure you have access to all these tools. But I have no horse in the race of which one you choose. Okay, so just this last one is very important. So we can go down here and we can just open files. And this is just a file browser. This will let us walk through every file on our computer. We can access different directories. We can go into videos. Then we can intro to Linux. Part 1. There is a part 2 coming. Bear in mind. And we can see, these are all of the clips that I've already included in this video. This is where at the end this whole video is going to live, is in this directory. We can go back to our home directory and get access to a whole bunch of things. So I'm going to go over the whole directory structure later and why I call it directory instead of folder. I know in Windows they call it folder, and actually even in this graphical file viewer they call it folder, but I find directory makes a lot more sense, because kind of when you're working in Linux, you have what is called a working directory. So whenever you execute something in a directory. So you can think of yourself as a little dude, little like a game avatar walking through a computer. You're a user, and as your user walks through the different directories, they execute things from that directory. So earlier when we were executing ex.py, we were in our home directory executing ex.py from our home directory. And that does become important later, and I'll get into the structure of it. But when I use the word directory, it's just because I'm thinking of myself as a little dude walking through a computer. So yeah, we'll get into more detail on that on part 2. So you can look forward to that. We'll go much more into the directory tree structure and where files are. We'll touch on the command line a little bit, and then in part 3, we're really going to look deep into the command line. It's really nowhere near as hard as a lot of people think it is. And it's a great skill to have. It's also way more fun. It's like a little puzzle, but not a very hard puzzle. So using the command line makes me feel very smart, very happy. Highly recommend it. So that's where we'll be getting into. So part 2 directory structure, part 3 command line. Look forward to that. Talk to you next time. This program was made possible through generous funding from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration of the U.S. Department of Commerce.